Diabolic Intent, Lord of the Undead, and the first printing of Meddling Mage, these are just a few of the impactful cards that came out of Magic the Gathering's 22nd expansion, Planeshift.
But those aren't the cards we're talking about today. No, we are talking about the sleeper picks, the EDH playable cards that are under $1 mostly, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We are going to talk about Planeshift and our picks for the Commander sleepers from that set. But first, if you liked the video by the end of it and you want to see more like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out.
With just the click of a button, you too can support this channel. Let's talk about Planeshift, a 143 card set, so this is a small set. We have a lot of cards to talk about today, and on Commander Sleeper series, Joel already mentioned it, it is cheap cards. Cards that are like $2 or less. Cards that you can get in at the ground floor right now. They've been around for a long time and they really haven't moved.
Let's absolutely jump right into them. With this series, if you've seen it before, we more often than not like to start with a uncommon or common that we think deserves special notice. Voice of All is our uncommon featured for this video. It has been printed into the dirt. This is not anywhere close to the only printing of this card. However, this is the OG printing. It's a cool foil to have, and in EDH, it's got some playability in a casual deck. White, 2 other for a flying 2/2 comes into play. Choose a color, so you get to choose the color right on the cast when it comes into play, rather, and it has protection from that color.
Yeah, you know, go with the player, go with the color that's most likely to remove it. I imagine this being good in something where you can suit this up and just get through in the air with some evasion.
Right.
I think the card is great, and yeah, the reason it's on the list is because this is where you can find the OG foil.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think this is a great card as like the secondary or a backup strategy in your Voltron deck. This would be a very good one because it comes into play with any color protection that you need in that game. But let's get out of the uncommon and into the rare. Jake, tell us about Gaia's Herald.
So, little 1/1 here for 1 green and 1 other. Creature spells can't be countered by spells or abilities. So, obviously this card is pretty squishy. It dives to a lot of stuff, but it's a great hose against the blue player at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to understand that it does say creature spells can't be countered in general. It's not just your spells, it's creatures, period.
That's true.
If there is any counter package in your deck, or you think you want to run some counter spells, if they're not specifically you're trying to counter instants or sorceries or enchantments or artifacts or something, maybe you don't want to run Gaia's Herald. But if you're all in on some kind of creature, token, Voltron, something strategy that's almost solely creature-based, Gaia's Herald could be a great card for you.
Yeah, I think the card is really good. You know, it's very cheap. You lock it down with something like Asceticism or anything that's going to give all of your permanents hexproof or indestructible, and then you should be in a really good place. But like we said, and this is probably why the card has such a low price, is because it dies to a lot, and it does affect everybody. But if you're just trying to go hard, recast your general over and over again, you know that people are going to remove it. I think this is a great card for your deck, and it can be had for a low price.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Magnagoth Treefolk is next up. 1 green, 4 other for a 2/6 Treefolk that says, for each basic land type among lands you control, Magnagoth Treefolk has land walk of that type. So we've got yet another, in this set of cards, yet another Voltron-ish card that we think maybe has some playability.
Yeah, it's definitely a Voltron-ish card, and when we originally talked about this list, the reason we included it is because Treefolk is kind of a fringy EDH kind of playable thing, and it ends up being, you know, a 6 power in that deck if you're playing Dora in the Siege Tower. So each basic land type, you're most likely, based on what kind of table you're at, it's most likely going to get to swing through as hard as it wants, wherever it wants to go, it may go.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a really good card, man.
I mean, if you're playing a Sultai deck and you've got Magnagoth Treefolk in there, most likely every other player at the table is running one of black or green or blue. And so in a Sultai deck in particular, maybe especially with a creature-based strategy where you're +1/+1 countering creatures, or you've got some equipment in there that can raise its power, or like Jake said, you're running that Doran Siege Tower Treefolk, everything is based on its toughness deck, which this is obviously a house in. I think that those are the kind of decks that I would look to play this Treefolk.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to see a lot of creatures on our Commander Sleeper series. It does take a lot of prerequisites, and that high toughness and the fact that this has built-in evasion. Not saying it can't get removed. That's how the game goes.
Of course.
Anything that you play in EDH can get removed
Sure.
in certain situations. So consider that, but I think it's a great card.
Yeah, it's a way to get some damage on the board. Planeswalker's Favor is up next.
Yes, 1 green, 2 other for an enchantment that has no limit, only limited based on the amount of mana you have, but 1 green, 3 other. Target opponent reveals a card at random from his or her hand. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the revealed card's converted mana cost. So, pretty cool card. You know, if you can isolate and figure out what card is in a player's hand, and if it's a high converted mana cost, there's a lot of potential going on here. And it is an enchantment, so it's hard to remove.
Yeah, you're looking at the floor of this card obviously being a land getting revealed and you getting 0/0 until end of turn. But the ceiling is as high as CMCs that people play in MTG EDH, and that could be, 10 on a single card. I also like in green being able to get some information about your opponent's hands.
Yeah, the fact that this is a mana sink, you build it into something like... this is a card that's just on everybody's mind. Xeris is a card that goes infinite with Freed from the Real.
Yeah.
You find a infinite combo, or, we're talking about Kinnan. Kinnan is another card that people are talking about going infinite with. You build this into those decks with green, you go infinite, and now all of a sudden you have this little... extra thing that you can do where you could just be like, I'm going to have you infinitely reveal cards until, an infinite amount of times that we see whatever card over and over again.
Exactly,
and now
right.
all of a sudden you're getting through for lethal. This card is super cheap. It's like $1, and it's a great mana sink. In EDH, we always talk about like, what is something that I can dump my mana into when I have nothing else to do? And this is a great card. It's one of those.
Plus, it's Rebecca Guay art. It features old Rebecca Guay art of Freya-Lise. It's
Look at those birds.
I'm telling you, she's got this like mystical planeswalker thing going on. A lot about this card from a lot of different angles. I really like. This is another one that I like from a lot of different angles. Look at that art, man. That art is sick. Cloud Cover is a 1 blue, 1 white, 2 other enchantment, sticky, that says whenever another permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may return that permanent to its owner's hand. So you just passively get the ability to go, oh, you're removing that. No, you're not. Sorry.
Yeah. It's very strong. If you build it into ETBs, it just becomes even more degenerate. And it has the power of being an enchantment. It is just so hard to answer. Black, red, and blue have trouble dealing with enchantments. Green and white, no such difficulty. But if you're in black, red, and blue, if you can't bounce it and counter it in blue, you're going to be in trouble if this resolves, because everything that your opponent does, like anything that they try to remove, you're just bouncing it back, and then you're getting additional value. So if you build into that strategy, there is a lot of great things that you can do with
Absolutely.
this card.
You can build Flicker into it, ETB into it. The only thing this doesn't get you around is a board wipe, but everything else, any targeted removal, that thing is coming back to your hand. Every 2 or 3 Commander Sleeper Series videos that we do, I come across a card that I'm like, wow, how have I never known that this card exists? Because this seems to have a pretty high ceiling as far as power level. For me, Cloud Cover was that card when we were looking through Planeshift set. I'm in love with this card.
This is just the big middle finger to targeted removal.
Yeah.
This is just... And it's in blue-white.
And
if you build this into like an Esper shell or something like that, game over, man.
Right.
Like the control that goes into Esper, and then being able to protect, you can play stuff like Aetherling in there, but this allows you to play big, splashy targets that if Cloud Cover's on the field...
Good to go.
you're good to go, man.
That's right. March of Souls is up next, and this is a big old board wipe.
Yeah, destroy all creatures that go wide here for 5 mana sorcery. They can't be regenerated. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller puts a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying into play. So this would be, in my ideal situation, built into a deck that goes wide. So like a Gav, kind of like tokens kind of thing. You blow up your field, you blow up everybody else's field. Everybody's getting spirits, but you're getting an epic crap ton more than they are.
Yeah, and it really plays well in a Zulaport Cutthroat kind of Aristocrats build, because everything that dies, you're getting each opponent damage triggers, and you're leaving behind 1/1s, which it's not that hard to get a bunch of 1/1s also dead, and so we potentially have the ability to cycle through all of our creatures twice to trigger our Blood Artists and our Zulaport Cutthroats. This is absolutely a card, like you said. I think this is a card that I like that third sentence starts with for each creature destroyed, not for each non-token creature destroyed this way, so that we can have a ton of Saprolings or a ton of plants or whatever with Avenger of Zendikar for chance, and then blow them up, our 30 plants, turn them all into flying 1/1s, swing out, sack them all, do more damage. There's a lot of nutty possibility with this board wipe.
And it's interesting because it's not super mana restrictive.
No.
One white is easy to fit into a lot of different things. I think, in Modern Magic the Gathering, it seems like anytime a board wipe comes out in a standard set, if it costs 4, it's something brutal like Settle the Wreckage that your opponent can play around, or it's like Shatter the Sky where they're drawing a card if they have a creature with power 4 or greater, or it's Destroy All Creatures, but it's going to be like 5 cost, like a Fumigate or something like that. So for a 5 cost spell, there's a lot of potential value that you can build so that you can benefit from the destruction. I like it a lot.
And honestly, when I'm looking through new commander cards and looking through sets that I'm trying to, see if there's any sleepers in there, I'm always happy to find a board wipe that's playable, because a lot of the best board wipes are very expensive. Here's a card called Destructive Flow that's got Jund colors across the top. It's another enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-basic land. So you've got this ongoing Punisher effect built into some kind of Pestilence style deck where you're making everybody passively sack stuff. You're running Sheoldred and effects like that, where everybody's just having to sacrifice stuff, and you're playing around it because you built that way, and your resources are dwindling at the same time, but you don't care because that's what you're trying to do anyway.
Well, yeah, and if you build this into green, you can build it in such a way where you say, I want to have X amount of basic lands because I'm going to be playing ramp. This hurts somebody that plays green so much less than it hurts somebody that's playing, the artifact deck that has, Darksteel Citadel and Minamo and all of these non-basic lands that are just excellent and important. Ancient Tomb, Temple of the False God. You're able to just be like, well, I'm going to play my basics because I'm going to tutor up my basics, and I might have to sacrifice my Dragon Skull Summit or my Blood Crypt, but I don't really mind in the long run because it's going to be absolutely nuking everybody's land base. Anybody who's playing non-basics, and EDH is just absolutely jam-packed full of non-basics. I know one of my decks has like 3 basic lands in it.
Right.
So it's just the potential is powerful.
Very high.
I like it a
and
lot.
There's the Cat Planeswalker Commander that specifically this is an absolute house in, because that commander, that Planeswalker, is returning lands from your graveyard
the Crucible
to your
of
hand.
Worlds. Yeah,
right, exactly. And that's another point I was going to make. Look at your effects that are like Crucible of Worlds, where you're either returning them from your graveyard to play, or you're returning them from your graveyard to your hand with some kind of stuff. And you can run cards like Terravor that are going to get bigger and bigger the more lands that you have in your graveyard. So again, you're leaning into the negative fallout of this, but your opponents didn't know that was coming, and so you can actually benefit from that negative. That's what I like about cards like Destructive Flow.
Look at this flavor text. Stage 2 of the Phyrexian invasion included the complete alteration of Dominaria's landscape. If that doesn't give you an idea of what's going on here. I don't know what will.
Well, Urza ends up blowing everything up just to avoid it, so...
Spoilers.
It just didn't go well for anybody on Dominaria. Kelton Twilight is our last enchantment here.
You know, that's before we get into Kelton Twilight, let's take a moment and say, no matter how hard it gets, it didn't get nearly as bad as what happened at Dominaria.
As the Phyrexian invasion.
That's right. All right, so Kelton Twilight, 1 red, 1 black, 1 other enchantment. At the end of each player's turn, if no creatures attack that turn, that player sacrifices a creature he or she controlled since the beginning of the turn.
I like this
Pretty
card
brutal.
in a deck where I've particularly built like a lot of death touch into my deck. So it's like at the end of each player's turn, if no creatures attack that turn because they didn't want to swing into a bunch of, little 1/1 death touch scorpions or whatever.
Sure.
They have to sacrifice a creature regardless, as long as that creature didn't come into play this turn.
Yeah, if you build this into No Mercy, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, your general's out, you have to swing. Okay, it goes through, destroy your general.
Right. Yeah,
Thank you
exactly.
very much.
This isn't a very expensive card. It leans heavily into decks that are already taxing or sacrificing, much like the land sacrifice that we just talked about. This card plays along those same lines and can be useful in a deck that's already working with those kind of synergies.
Yeah, I think it's a great card. It's very cheap. It's very niche, but that's the point of this series, is to point out useful niche cards. If this is the kind of thing that you're looking for, I need a way to make my opponent's creatures attack. I want them to attack. Then this is going to be the card for you, and you have to build it into something that has red and black.
Those are our picks for Planeshift. We appreciate everybody watching. If you think we missed a card in Planeshift that needs to be included in our Commander Sleeper series, Planeshift Edition, please let us know in the comments down there below.
Yes, we enjoy making this series. It's a great time all the time. We know that you guys like watching it, and so it's just so nice to have you check it out.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to support us further, we do have a Patreon. We've got monthly giveaways over there. Go check it out and see if it's a good fit for you. And if you want to hang out, we stream over on Twitch. Go find us over there as well. Jake, I'm tapped out.
That's it. Until the next time, I will see you on the Flippity.